welcome everyone. This is the May 28th Board of County Commissioners zoning meeting without any actual zoning items, or possibly one depending on how you want to look at it. We are called to order at 5 on the dot. So we'll start out with a moment of silence. Commissioner Smith, would you lead us in our socially distanced pledge?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have a whole slew of minutes to approve on item D as in Delta, February 25th of this year, March 31st, March 27th, April 2nd, April 6th, and April 21st, all of this year. May I have a motion to approve all of them?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I will give that one to Commissioner Pritchett, even though you were very close behind Commissioner Isnardi, with a second from Commissioner Smith. All in favor of approving that whole slew of minutes that I read off, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Anyone want anything pulled from consent? May I have a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
Motion from Commissioner Smith. I'll second it. All in favor of approving consent, all items, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. It's a good start. All right, I'd like to, if we can, we'll go to public comment, but just for staff's benefit, I'd like to, after public comment, address item J4, because I do know we have several people here for that, and I'd like to clear them out so that they don't have to hang out unnecessarily, since there are several, again, for that particular item. So we have at least one speaker under public comment. We have got our friend Mike Bramson from Altamont Springs with the Fire Union. Let's hear from him, if we may. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Let me set my clock just in case I go over. I'm Mike Bramson, Altamont Springs. I'm the president of the Firefighters Union. Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for hearing me out. When I come here today, I know this is a zoning meeting, but there's been a lot of active things going on in Brevard County, a lot of national press and some recent events. So why I'm up here is based on some of the things that happened over the past couple weeks with the policy group and how the county is going to be working towards emergency and some changes to the EOC and emergency management that came out this week. What the union brings to the table today is consideration for the commissioners, the county manager, and people who were involved with the rank and file, the supervisory, and the contracts of the firefighters, is to consider the changes that are going to be made to the way Brevard County deals with emergencies, how it affects the safety of the firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, lifeguards, pretty much anybody in the public safety group, including the sheriff's office, how it may affect the way we can sustain and negotiate fairly for wages in the future on a lot of things we were working on earlier this year, and a lot of things the union worked with the commissioners and the county manager last year going into this year before the COVID-19 stalled everything out. And lastly, we want to make sure that the terms and conditions of employment are sustainable. The things that we do change or the things that have been brought up will still allow us to respond as the public expects us to do so. I'm not quite sure the details that may or may not come out of the next couple of weeks and months, but I do want to have the opportunity to speak the thoughts, processes, and concerns of the firefighters, specifically towards how it affects our safety and how we respond to other events, hopefully not like COVID, but our seasonal events like woods fires, brush fires that we just cleared. Now we're entering hurricane season this week, and our day-to-day activity, expectation to perform our job for heart attacks, strokes, car accidents, afternoon thunderstorms. This week has been fantastically eventful for us. I reserve the rest of the time if there's any other questions. If not, thank you once again for your time.
Any questions? As always, I appreciate you coming out, sir. It's always good to see you.
Yes,
and
sir.
Hopefully, when you have your next round of negotiations, I'll choose my words carefully because I see Mr. Abate looking at me with a sense of dread potentially. Hopefully things will turn out as well as they possibly can given the budget constraints, but certainly I think you have some allies on the commission here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I thought Jim was over there. Do we know if there are any further public comment for this section? No? Oh, there you are, Jim. Thanks. Yeah, I don't know how I missed you with a jacket like that. I need to go to the optometrist. I apologize. All right, so that's it for public comment. No public hearings, unfinished business. I-1. Jim, is that going to be you or Ian? Frank?
That would be me.
All right.
Commissioners, this interlocal agreement is a template that we would like to use moving forward with all the municipalities as it relates to care funding. We've addressed a variety of issues in there to assure that we best protect the board while at the same time following through in what the board previously approved in terms of what we would provide to municipalities, similar to what the board has received or would be receiving in terms of approved care funding that is U.S. Treasury. We can be confident the U.S. Treasury will approve when they do an audit. So we have shared this with the municipalities, and we believe that this draft is one that, if the board approves it, we will be able to get signed from all the municipalities that want to participate in the program, and I'm hopeful that all of them will.
Any discussion? Do we need a motion, Mr. Bate?
Yes, I would.
All right, a motion from Commissioner Smith. A second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Tabaya. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Okay, I hope I've given staff enough time to queue up Jays and Juliet 4. We'll go ahead and address that. Peter, I see you here. I see Rusty, I see Giles. I don't know who else is planning on addressing this. Peter, are you going to address it, or what would you?
I'll kick it off, sir.
If you would, please.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a unique opportunity that just presented itself to us actually this past Friday. The 2020 Junior Olympics is a major sporting event. It's juniors 18 and under. They are athletes from all over the country. Every year this is held in different cities. Well, Norfolk, Virginia had won the 2020 games. However, because of the situation currently with COVID, they've opted to not hold the games there. So that left the AAU, which is the governing body that hosts the games and runs them, trying to figure out where they're going to go, where the potential is. I have here with me today Mr. Rusty Buchanan, who's Vice President of the AAU. I'm going to let him talk in a second. I just wanted to set up some of the things that we're seeing from the tourism perspective. There is a potential for several thousand athletes, including officials, and then of course their family members and such that come in for games like this. Over a 2-week period, they're looking at the last week of July and the first week of August. On the low side, we could potentially see 10,000 room nights from this, but there's also a potential for a couple of other events to tie in with this. For instance, the Sunshine State Games, which are the Florida amateur games, they're looking for a venue. And so if they join, then that could add more athletes and it could add more visitors as well. So I think it's a unique opportunity. The economic impact could be significant right during a time when we've obviously seen a tremendous downturn from COVID. In the tourism market, the businesses are hurting right now. Hoteliers could really use these room nights, so this is a real opportunity. What the ask is, just so we'll lay it out there up front, and then I'll let Mr. Buchanan talk a little bit more detail, but the ask is from TDT funds, $50,000 out of the Capital Facilities Fund, which would help finish the track at Vieira High School. And I think, I'm not sure.
Matt Susan, I see back there.
Matt Susan's here to talk on behalf of Brevard County Schools, because the school board will be very involved in this if this happens. A lot of the facilities would come from their side as well as some from our side. So the $50,000 would be capital facilities to help finish the track at Vieira High School. There's also an ask that the fees for any facilities that are used from Parks and Recreation be waived, and I'll let Mr. Buchanan address what he thinks those venues will be. And then $100,000 from our sports grant fund, but we would get a 50% match on that from the Florida Sports Foundation, and that would be basically it'd be a 50-50, so 50,000 from us and 50,000 from them. So that's the ask. I'll let Mr. Buchanan come up and talk a little bit more about the event itself, and certainly you can direct any questions to him about that.
I appreciate that. In full disclosure, I did meet with Rusty and Peter and Giles last week on this item, although no one gave me a bag of cash or anything like that, so I don't think there's any sort of conflict. Rusty, when you come up, if you weren't already going to do it, if you'd be so kind as to let the commission know what the typical arrangements are for cities or municipalities, counties, to obtain the games, so that we have a relative idea in terms of why this is a good thing for Brevard or why it's actually less expensive for us than it otherwise might be.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I know most everybody in the room or seen you once or twice. Junior Olympic Games started in 1967. Vice President Humphrey started it, and it's grown every year. And it's grown to a point now where it became the largest multi-sport sporting event in the U.S. Communities like us have long since been unable to host it because of facility needs. It was actually Norfolk State who was supposed to host a track this year that said that they were concerned of bringing their students back, and they didn't want other people on their campus during that time. So that kind of caused the rift between the ability to host this event and the actual sports committees that were involved in it. It's a 2-year bid process. And the bid process alone is over $1 million just to bid on the rights to host this. So Norfolk had already put in $375,000 or whatever the number was in cash, plus all the additional amenities. It came up to over $1 million. And their operating budget was somewhere between $3 and $5 million to actually run the event. So when they said, we no longer feel comfortable at Norfolk State, we don't have another venue, they started to look around, because the two big concerns were, do you have a track large enough to host this, and do you have an indoor convention center? That's typically what it takes to put this on because of all the multi-sport events. Well, there were several other communities that said, hey, we can maybe do it. And there's another couple. I know Chicago has been considered. I know one in North Carolina. Don't remember if it's Greensboro or Charlotte, is say, hey, consider us. But the infrastructure is only one part of it, and the finance is only one part of it. The biggest part of it is the operational aspect. Who is going to run this? Who's going to administer, even 20 different sports? Well, the AAU's national headquarters is 35 miles down the road in Orlando with 60 staff people that do this every single day. So the AAU said, hey, you know what? If we look at this swath in Central Florida, maybe there's an opportunity here because of our AAU staff that might not be somewhere else in the country. Well, I had been working, most of you guys know that I've pretty much made a career out of sports. I'm now the national vice president of the AAU. I sit on our Olympic committee with the bobsled and the skeleton athletes, for crying out loud. But I kind of understand this business, and I kind of know the business model. So the Sports Foundation, through the governor's office, had kind of asked, is there any way to take the Sunshine State Games, which had canceled 15 of their sports programs during this, and put them all into an AAU program, make them all look the same, and oh, by the way, could we maybe do it as a festival as well? So the conversation over the last 10 days, we found out that Norfolk was not going to, or Tidewater, Virginia, was not going to be able to do this, was how many players can we pull together, and what would this potentially look like? So we've talked to Matt, because obviously the biggest thing that we need is we need a track. There are several really, really nice tracks in this county. Astronaut's got an awesome track. Palm Bay's got a track. Satellite's got a track, and Vera's putting one in. So I think we've got the track component potentially covered. What else would we need? If we wanted to do wrestling, if we wanted to do taekwondo, if we wanted to do karate, can we do those with school board facilities? So we started piecing these things all together. So the first blush of what this would look like is, how many of those traditional AAU Junior Olympic Games sports would come? Track and field, it was the largest track and field meet in the world last year. Had 16,000, 15,000 track and field athletes alone. We couldn't do that, but I think we can get 2,000 or 3,000 here, and I think we've got the facilities to do that. So then we plug in the other AAU sports as tier one. Tier 2 is to go back and identify those that the Florida Sports Foundation, through out of the governor's office, have said, can we throw in Florida residents and Florida participants, and can we use those sports programs that were canceled as part of this festival? And that would become Tier 2. Tier 3, that would all be called the AAU Junior Olympic Games, would be those local sports that we might be able to do that somebody couldn't. We could do surfing, we could do skateboarding, we could do beach volleyball. We could do some things on our own that might make this possible. So what we would need, well, obviously would need some school board assistance, would need use to some of gymnasiums, some track, and there's probably a few county facilities that we would have to look at. Vieira Regional Park, got awesome fields. We could potentially do maybe the soccer, maybe lacrosse there. Mitchell-Ellington the same way, and probably the best natural turf softball complex in the state is Chain of Lakes. I mean, it's primo for softball. Florida Sports Foundation is pretty excited because they have not had girls fast pitch softball in their mix in the last 3 years. So they're excited about the possibility to bring that back. So we've gone through all of who the players might potentially be, what this might potentially look like. The Florida Sports Foundation has a deadline of June 1st for their grants protocol. I'm supposed to call her as soon as this is over. We would request the grant support from the state, which on those out-of-state portions. And then we would submit this as a pseudo bid package back to the AAU and the Junior Olympic Games Committee. We make sense because of where we are and the support we've got. And the TDC, I think, unanimously agreed today that this was something worth going forward with.
Now, Rusty, just a question for you, and if you want to punt it to either Peter or Giles or,
Sure.
or Matt, that's fine. Obviously, the TDC, Matt, I tried to stay out, so there wasn't any issue with sunshine, with Commissioner Isnardi having called into that. What do you all anticipate in terms of room nights that this will generate?
Well, we back that up into kind of a guesstimate of participants. And from the AAU core, not counting the track and field portion of it, we're somewhere in the 1,000 to 2,000 athlete participation, would be a guess. You know, we could always come around, these folks could say, hey, you know, we got a second round coming, we're not coming, and, you know, it could fall off, in which case we'd been in a similar situation. But from the initial conversations we've had, we could be in that ballpark. You add on the track and field portion, I don't think we're going to get huge numbers like they have in Houston and Detroit and Greensboro last year. But this will be the first time in the history of the Junior Olympic Games that you don't have to qualify to come. So it would be an open competition, and the largest track and field district in the United States is Florida. So just within the state of Florida, there's over 9,000 registered track and field participants that could hypothetically be interested in coming. So that's the big variable in the numbers, where the track and field numbers fall. So if you just do the math, statistically it's 1.8 to 2.2 other travelers per kid, average stay of about 3 nights, 3 to a room. And I think that's how we came up, Giles, you may want to help me, that's about how we came up with the numbers that could potentially be in the 10,000 range for hotel room nights. So, and that's a swag number. It's a scientific, wild-ass guess, but I think that's probably as good as we can do until we know the commitment. But I would tell you the state of Florida is 100% on board. Florida Sports Foundation is 100% on board. The sports conventions that I mentioned within the AAU are, and we've already had some interest of other local promoters saying, wait, we can have our kids, local kids, be part of the Junior Olympic Games, and all we have to do is work this event under your banner, and so do some things that traditionally would not have had an opportunity to be a part of the games.
Any questions for Rusty?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Tobias?
And pardon the elementary nature of these questions. I just was made aware of this with a 1 o'clock email. I guess this got put on the agenda at 10:45, and I didn't get around to checking out till 1. And when I called Mr. Kranis, he was in the meeting. So again, sorry for these very basic questions.
I'll do my best, and I probably have basic answers,
So
but I'll try to do
sorry. It sounds like what you're telling us is Virginia has decided to go in a different direction with COVID. Is that correct?
Not the state of Virginia.
Sorry.
It was, the primary concern was at Norfolk State. And since they're not bringing their students back in the summer, they didn't feel it would be appropriate to allow 10, 12, 15,000 kids from around the country when they have not allowed theirs. So it's really more of a university issue
Okay.
that kind of started it.
Okay, so there's something systemic there that has caused you to look at Florida. You in this area in Florida, you said that we have some good tracks here. You said that was a positive. That's super. You said that the largest number of potential participants, because it's open, is located here in the state of Florida. You said that staffing is very convenient, right? Because 35 miles, is that what you said?
Orlando. We're
Orlando.
at
Gosh.
ESPN, we're Wide World of Sports.
Okay. Help me here. If we don't offer you this incentive, it sounds like there's enough other ancillary reasons to come here. Where else are you looking at, and what are they offering as far as it seems like, you know, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I don't know the incentive for us to offer a package when I don't know what we're competing with. It seems like we're second place here.
Well,
Is there a third, is what I'm asking?
well, the simple answer is this event, wherever it goes, is not going to look like it has in the past. So it's not going to have the numbers. It's probably not going to have the number of sports it's going to have. So would a proposal sent in by Greensboro, for example, be highly rated dollar-wise and, you know, venue? Greensboro hosted the Junior Olympic Games last year, so they're familiar with it. They've got their infrastructure in place. They've got their people in place. Probably be a pretty easy thing for them to gear some of that back up. I don't know where they're going to come in. I wish I did, and would slide in, but that would certainly be a conflict. But I think what makes this make the most sense is instead of having to come out of pocket with a tremendous amount of money, we've got the state of Florida willing to help us. We've got the AAU staff in Orlando willing to help us. And I think we can be very, very competitive in something that we put forward to the Junior Olympic Games Committee and say, this makes the most sense.
Okay, so I appreciate that. You sound like a very great salesman here, but I didn't hear any other location that was making any other offer. There are many positives that you've said. Your organization is here. The participants are here. Why do we need to come up with an additional, whatever, $150,000, potentially $200,000 to incentivize something that it seems like is the best option that you have? You haven't said, well, Greensboro's offering $400,000 or $1 million. You told us the one place that you had this wonderful contract doesn't want you anymore.
Right.
And you know.
Well, I wish I could answer that and say, well, Greensboro's going to give you this, but certainly they
But you
wouldn't
just,
do that.
help me here, you just
Sure.
said the athletes that are located here, the largest group, you said 9,000.
Of the track and field athletes.
Track and field athletes, right? You said your staff is 35 miles down the road. They're not 35 miles down the road from Greensboro.
You're right.
You see what I'm saying?
Well,
here?
that's why this makes sense, but the Greensboro folks.
Oh, I think it makes
sure
sense
they'll
too. I'm just trying to find out whether it makes sense without the hundreds of thousands of dollars of incentives.
Let me jump in. Rusty, I think what he's asking essentially is, if we say, we'd love to have you here, but we don't want to put 50,000 into Vieira's field or, their track, are you going to be here anyway?
The simple answer would be doubtful, simply because other communities see the value in what this is, and they see that there's, it's a bargain regardless of what you put into it. I wish I knew what Greensboro was willing to put in. Before we got involved, I would have said they've got the huge advantage because they did it last year. They know how many hotel room nights, and they've got the people to put in place.
I appreciate it. And I'll just throw this out there because I think it does bear worth at least reiterating the fact it's not going to the AAU, anything from the TDC. It's going toward the school board to improve Vieira High School. And the fact that we had in the recent past an item to address the paving situation outside of Ralph Williams in D4, which used to be about 5 minutes from where I lived, and they took a larger portion than they've historically taken in terms of the financial responsibility for doing that. If they're working with us on things, I'd like to work with them on things. They're a taxing authority, we're a taxing authority. It's going to get done anyway. If I remember from speaking with Matt Susan, who's in the back, they've raised substantially, I should say, at least the majority of what they need in order to finish that. They just don't have all of it. Whether it's us doing it, whether it's the TDC doing it, whether it's the school board doing it, it's tax dollars one way or the other. So for us to help the school board, which has been good to work with us, I don't see this as something that's abusive. TDC, I trust my appointee. I trust even your appointee in this, Commissioner Tabaya. If everyone, including our commission rep, voted for it unanimously, that's not the dispositive answer for me, but it's compelling.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
I did something dangerous, and I actually read the form that I guess you put out at 10:45, and I assume it came out of your office because it says District 2. But anyway, you said it was all going to Viera High in the facilities?
The 50,000, yes.
Yeah, but there's another $100,000 out there, so it's not all going to capital. In fact, $100,000 would be offset by maybe a grant from, as you pointed out, from the state, but either way, it's going to referees. So this is not all 100% going into capital.
I apologize if I was less than clear, or if I didn't articulate my thought as well as I should have. That's not going to the AAU. My point is it's not, because in calling Rusty a salesman, which he may be good at or may not be, that would imply that either Rusty or his organization would benefit financially directly from what we're doing. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. If the referees are not contractors or certainly not employees of AAU, I just draw a distinction between that and him making a sales pitch for his own organization.
Well, clearly they're benefiting directly because they're saying if they don't receive this, as he said, they're not going to come here. So whether the benefit is direct or indirect, there is a benefit to the AAU, so much so, as Rusty's saying, it's probable that they won't go here, though we have no other explanation of what the other offers are for the 1,000 to 2,000 folks that may or may not come to this event.
I'm going to do something dangerous. I'm going to ask a question I don't know the answer to. Sure. Rusty, if this goes through, will you see a penny in your pocket that you otherwise wouldn't have had? I don't know the answer.
Well, it would be nice to think there would be a profit at the end. But the reality of it is, if you look at what, and I kind of answered this question earlier today within the TDC guys, and basically, the budget is going to be what sports are there and how do you back into the money you've got available to spend. From entry fees and your projections of what you might do with other things, because the total model that they have, I mean, they've got a television contract that they've had to cancel. So it's all kind of something that's going to be morphed together to look like this AAU Junior Olympic Games program. So we'll have to back into a budget based on what of funds are available. And I'm getting paid by the AAU. I'm their national vice president. That's a paid position. So that's kind of where I stand. Is I'm trying to do what I think makes the most sense. So
I appreciate it. My position with respect to this, obviously, we're in a spot where our economy has been substantially depressed, as has just about every other area, worldwide for that matter, as a result of the pandemic we've been dealing with. I believe that this is something of an opportunity for us in that it will substantially increase the number of room nights that are taken up. Even if your estimate is markedly over what it ends up being, I think the value is there. Frankly, I believe you when you say that it may or may not be here, or that that it's doubtful that it would be here if we don't do this. I believe that. I think this is something that's in the community's interest. I think it'll spur the tourism sector to a degree. I think it also gives people something positive to do, which certainly is nice in an environment where people are depressed and they've been stuck at home for a prolonged period of time. I think the other state or the other university's loss is our gain. So I plan on supporting it. But any other questions for Rusty?
Yes, sir.
No? Yes? Maybe?
Sir, I'm sorry, I might have missed it. What are the dates we're looking at for this?
last
event?
week of July, first week of August.
Okay. Is this event typically in different states year to year? Is it-
Yes. Historically, there's a rotation that they follow.
Okay.
Detroit, Houston, the Tidewater, Virginia, and Greensboro are the 4 locations that have rotated through.
Okay, so this is a one-time thing for us. We wouldn't get it back again?
There's very little chance. We just don't have the venues to support it the way that they historically do. And we don't have, I wouldn't come before you and say spend $3 million to bid on the event.
Okay.
It's a great economic impact, but I sure wouldn't spend that to do it.
Are there-
So doubtful that we'd have this opportunity. Now.
So it's
that-
just a one-time investment for us? Are there other investors that become involved with this type of event? I know it's a big organization, so I'm guessing, do they come with a pot of money and they spend money to set this up other than these funds?
Well, the hope would be that within each sports committee, they would determine what their operational needs would be and what their budgetary needs would be. And either through entry fee or through gate receipts, they would be able to come up with those things. They're probably going to fall short. We would have to subsidize it with, is there a merchandising sale? Unfortunately, that's already contracted to somebody else. So there's still some hoops we've got to jump through. But the hope would be, certainly this would be the only ask of this body. But there would be potentially another ask back within those individual sports to help raise the dollars they need to support and fund their operations.
Okay, and then just one more thing. I know we're in the middle of the COVID thing, and we're about to, I don't know if the other commissioners are, allow our baseball and stuff get back, and we're going to make them abide by CDC guidelines. How is this event going to fall into those guidelines if they haven't completely lifted all the bans as far as social obligations?
You guys may or may not be familiar with the President's Council on Sport and Physical Fitness. That's my program. We administer that. We have, when all this started, we have prepared to relaunch within the school system President's Council programs. So the first thing we did, we went to Washington and sat down with Secretary Azar and Health and Human Services, CDCs, and said, how do we do these things we do safely? So we have been working through, not as much the last few weeks, but through an epidemiologist with them on what does the national protocol look like. As the Florida Sports Foundation moves into reopening their programs, what is the state safety protocols? And the next step would be here, how do we enlist our health department in help us making sure that what we do safely? Because that's got to be the number one concern.
I know. And then when you mentioned wrestling, I thought, ooh, I wonder how he's going to pull that off.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's the first I've heard of it today, too. So it's
I've had about 8 days.
Yeah.
I was enjoying sitting in my backyard. But I think it's a great opportunity, something that's not going to come around again. And I just think we would be amiss if we didn't at least take a good hard shot at it.
Okay.
We might lose. I think we've got the political clout to do this, but it's certainly not a done deal yet.
okay. I do like youth sports. Can I ask Mr. Kranis a question real
Please.
quick?
Peter, if you don't mind, sir.
Mr. Kranis, what's your thought on this investment into this? What's your thought as far as the tourist economic strategies? And I'm
Sure.
trying to sound like a grown-up commissioner here, so if you could.
Sure. Well, refer back to our sports committee. Our sports grants look at exactly this kind of activity, but at a much, much smaller level. So a lot of the grants that we've awarded have been in the 10, 15, 20,000 range for 1,000 rooms, maybe 1,200 rooms. We're talking now about 8 to 10,000 plus rooms. So it puts it in a whole different category. But from an ROI perspective, if we ended up with 10,000 room nights, that could be a very significant economic impact in the millions. So the ROI on $100,000, $150,000 would certainly be there from our
Okay.
perspective.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass the gavel, at least figuratively, because we don't want to pass anything tangible here, to Commissioner Pritchett.
Might not give it back.
You might not give it back, that's all right. And I'll make the motion essentially to direct staff to work with Rusty and to work with the Tourism Development Office in furtherance of it.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
I have a few more questions
Oh,
for
actually, I
other
guess
folks.
she's carrying it now,
Sorry,
so-
Madam Chair. Go
Right ahead, I won't even interrupt you.
Okay, starting with Ms. Bentley, Madam Chair, is that okay? So going back to the capital expenditure, that being for the track, my understanding is the way we normally do this is the money is usually fronted and then the county reimburses the way for these type of capital expenditures. Is that correct?
That's how it's being proposed this time.
So there is the money will be fronted by the school and school board and then reimbursed by the county?
No, this one, they are saying that we will give the money first.
Okay, so
Right.
this is an anomaly, in other words?
This is an anomaly,
It-
yes.
Yeah. I see some issue, I see some large issues.
I see Matt Susan, our school board commissioner.
Well, we were going to
for
vote on
D4.
it. I just wanted to, and I'll let him, Madam
Sure.
Chair, I do have some other
Good
questions.
question.
Thank-
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Can we hear this one, then you answer the rest? You have me on a cliffhanger right
Sure.
now.
Sorry.
That's your process, so you fronting, and that's your guys' decision with the school district. We are in the process, the reason that this track.
I'm sorry.
As opposed, it's great questions, John. The reason that this track is what is this revenue and everything else is it's a polyurethane surface. And that is, astronaut surface is latex, it's going down. They're actually asking us to renovate it right now. Palm Bays is in the same situation, and Satellites is decent. Polyurethane surface is what we at Viera we're going to try to run because it will attract all of the other athletes from around the state and around the southeast United States. That was the reason we were shooting for it. We've raised 3/4 of the money, and we were going to get it ready by the end of the track season. The reason that this became such an issue is that AAU would love, as we was talking to the track director, they only run on a surface called Mondo, which is a really good, high-class, Olympic-grade surface. This polyurethane is what would attract the athletes to come. If you say that you're running on a latex surface, they're not going to come as much, plus they're not going to be as advantageous to bring the games. So when I was brought into this, I said, okay, we've got X amount that we still need for the program. If you guys are willing to put that X into it, we can get the constructed and we can draw the games and we can do it. That was what the school district was part of. And it's a good point.
So you have
But that process there of you guys giving the money first, that's you guys. That's not us.
So you have 150,000 you're already investing in the track?
Yes, 260,000 total. We have
260K.
165,000 already. We have a fundraiser that every year has brought in between 25 and 30,000 that comes in on June 7th. So the rest of that is also being sold in bricks and everything else, but that makes up the difference. The 50,000 will get us to where we need to be.
What if the worst-case scenario, since you just said this, is you have a fundraiser and it doesn't come up with the funds and we're short?
School district, and I can't speak right now for the school district because I'm one of 5 members, just
Okay.
like you guys, and
Yeah.
also with superintendent. The school district would have to make a decision, but the school funds that are inside the School of Viera would have to do that. But every year for the last 5 years, the Eat My Crust 5K has raised over $25,000, and that's all we're asking them to do right now. So to say that they wouldn't do that is,
I know, it's just a weird time right now with everybody,
Oh, yeah.
so.
yeah.
Well, we
I
have
agree.
capital, the estimates, are you going to see millions of dollars less on the half penny that goes to capital improvements? So,
And
betting
that's
on
completely-
fundraisers right now, and I really appreciate the, surface of the track. You're going to find this hard to believe, but I was really slow and didn't matter what I was running on. My point now is look after the taxpayer money, and I don't know why we would treat any organization different. We reimburse, we don't front. If for some reason the athletes didn't come, then we're out $50,000. And if your pie fundraiser doesn't raise it, then we're out $50,000. So, and in all honesty, I'm probably not going to support this either way, but I think that if we were, we should treat everyone, the taxpayers, the exact same by a reimbursement instead of a fronting money, especially with an organization that says patently, we're not coming back. So, anyway.
I think the fundamental question that we ask ourselves is not do we fund this $50,000 or not? It's the fundamental question of, do we want to invest in an opportunity that will raise revenue and bring back businesses and bring back a spark to our county? And so when I heard that, I said, here's the situation, here's what we have, I'm in. I would love to be a part of it. But when we have an organization, a national organization that's willing to come during a time when we're sitting here and we're looking at tax revenues, state revenues, everything are down, and we're looking at that as an economic outcome, and we have an opportunity here to possibly create a spark inside of our county, that's why I threw in. So I agree, the semantics of maybe this fundraiser's not going to do this, maybe that, but they have raised that much money every single time over the last 5 years. Our school district, is there. So if you guys are willing to move in, we're partners. We'd like to work with you guys. If not, John, I understand.
Yeah, I got another question, of course.
Can I jump in this one real quick? Felix?
Absolutely, by all means,
Okay.
Chairwoman.
Okay, so I like what you're saying. So the question would be, is if we did this on contingency, there's a signed contract that they are coming here before we invest the funds. I think that would alleviate some of that. And the other thing is, sir, is if you could get the school board to say if they are lacking in that excess amount, that you'll find another way to get the funds, and this still will be the project that's done for this event. I think that might help that quite a bit.
It's a good question, and I think that's something that could be answered. I think that that's something that we can do.
Okay. Commissioner, sir?
And I'll modify my motion to incorporate those two suggestions.
Okay.
You ready for another? Okay, this would be for Mary Ellen, Madam Chair. Mary Ellen Donner, I'm sorry.
Good evening, Mary Ellen Donner, Parks and Recreation Director.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, certainly.
Sorry. And I expected this to come, sorry, after the rec sports, so preview. We're going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. So stay tuned if you want to see a great loss, whether it be 130, 160, or 300. Either way, you're going to have much less revenue than what you did. This is looking as though there is somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 in waive fees. Now, the argument may be made that those fees would never be collected if this organization came, and I see, Rusty nodding, but there also wouldn't be the traffic and the use and the picking up of the trash, so there are expenses. Parks doesn't make money. So my question is do we have an extra, are you hiding an extra, I'm going to get to 50,000, but let's layer that on the couple 100,000 we're about to use. Where is that, where is that coming from? And I know I'm the appropriating body, or one of the 5 members of the appropriating body, but do you have $50,000 squirreled away is my question.
No. But I've been working with Mr. Cranis, and we were discussing which facilities, and I just got this information today as well, so I've not really had enough time to delve into it. I think that perhaps 50,000 might be on the high side if those are the 3 areas that they're looking for, and they partner with the school district for gyms and other facilities. It would be a loss in revenue that we would not have collected. And additionally, I believe it would be staff time that would assist. I believe that's, I think, what it is that you were looking for, that we would not charge a facility fee and that the staff would be prepping the various fields and so forth. So it would have to be absorbed in what other duties would not be performed during those 2 weeks of maintenance.
So thank you for pointing that out. So not only would we not be collecting the fees that would be associated with this, there are other organizations that would otherwise potentially come and pay the fees. So that loss added to the 2 weeks of staff time, though it would be under 50 once the staff time is included in there. Is that more than 50,000 or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And so we.
And I don't expect answers. If you got, it sounds like you got this the exact same time I did.
Yes, sir. The recreation partners, to whom I believe you're referring, don't pay fees to utilize the fields. They pay light fees.
Okay.
And so typically during this time of year, it's our longest time, so our light fees during this period of time would be significantly less than, say, December. So I think what I'm hearing is basically staff time is what we're talking about to assist with the maintenance of these events.
Okay.
Did I get that right?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. And one last question. This would be for Mr. Cranis. Do we have any contracts on this? I've heard Florida is behind this. I don't know that I've ever heard of a state behind anything, but, you know, I heard that there was a grant that potentially could defray some of the costs.
Yes, sir.
I've heard, you know, potentially 10,000. Is there anything hard in this other than the money that we would be laying out?
Yeah, so just to answer that, I mean, we got this a few days ago. Obviously, we would want contracts with the AAU. We would want a contract with the school board regarding the track. And then the Florida Sports Foundation, they've been a very good partner of ours. We have been a recipient of a number of grants, and they usually match us 40 to 50%. So I would think that's a very high likelihood, particularly since Mr. Buchanan's been talking directly with their executive director, and they've been giving that indication. So that's usually a 90 to 95% surety that that's going to happen. So, you know, we certainly wouldn't put any dollars in until we have contracts in place, so we'd have to work pretty quickly, but we would do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if it's all right, could we hear just briefly from the TDC chair, Mr. Malone?
yes. But can I let, Sheriff Ivy's been waving
Yeah,
at us
please.
for a while, so, Sheriff.
This
You're
may
about
come
to
as a
tell
shock,
us.
but I ran track in high school.
I was going to say, you're about to tell us. Yeah.
I did wrestle though. So, our CFO is with me today in the room, and he was just telling me that, and maybe this will help the dynamics. I would offer this to the commission if it would help. But we have about $30,000 in state forfeiture funds that, by law, we have to donate, and this would meet the criteria for that donation. So we would offer that to help the commission with lightening that load a little bit.
Thank you.
So, all right, so. Sheriff does it again.
And I'll go ahead and modify my motion
To include
to
that.
reduce it by the 30 that the sheriff's graciously offered.
Yeah, Giles Malone with your appointee of the TDC. The group met today, and we sort of thoroughly vetted all of the ins and outs on this event. And just to be clear on some of your questions, Commissioner, is the ask is for $100,000 to help support the actual event, of which the state has committed at least 50% back. Okay, so that's $50,000 coming out of the marketing on the TDC side. And then the capital facilities would contribute $50,000 towards the track. Okay, so that's the first thing. So we hosted this event in 1996, the Junior Olympic Games. So that was, what, 24 years ago? And it was a tremendous event for Brevard County. Incredible numbers of people came in. And my father used to tell me, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, okay? And so $1 million was pledged from Norfolk, Virginia. And the university has said, nope, we can't do it. And so knowing the people in this community, the school board, they're going to be on board with the gymnasiums and the facilities, and knowing the support that we have from our hoteliers and from Rusty Buchanan, we can pull off a tremendous coup for the people who are unemployed in Brevard County, our restaurateurs. They'll receive a tremendous benefit from this. We estimate the $7 to $8 million benefit for Brevard County to host this event. So from my standpoint, it's absolutely a tremendous opportunity, and I think we should welcome this with open arms.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do we, Madam Chair, are we still Madam Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. My dad's also said never pay for the undercoating on a car. It's already coming with the car. So my question is the stuff they magically spray on the bottom and charge you $500 for? The thought is no one else is offering them incentives. Virginia has said, we don't want you. They have an infrastructure already in place down here. Not me, this is what Rusty said. They have staff that's already in place. The largest amount of folks, because they're not doing time trials. Apparently, if I can run in that, group. Now, I guess I'm a little bit over 18, quite a bit over 18, but anyone can run in that, and the greatest pool is down here. I want $7 or $8 million. I want 1,000 room nights. But I think we can get the $7 or $8 million. I think we can get the 1,000 or the 1,000 folks down here because I think we intrinsically have more to offer than anyone else. It's not a coup. We're not taking anything away from Virginia. Virginia said they didn't want them. What am I missing?
Well, maybe Rusty, can address that point more. What I understand is Chicago is an interested party, as well as Charlotte, North Carolina, okay? So, but we have the vice president of the AAU living in Cocoa Beach, who would love to see it come to Brevard County. That's our ace in the hole right there, for this gentleman right here. And so I have utmost confidence in him being able to pull this off so that when these people leave Brevard County, they'll have a fantastic experience, and we'll have a huge economic benefit for Brevard for a relatively low investment. So that's what I meant by that, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I think this is a great opportunity, and we should reach out and grab it with both hands and move on. Get this county going again.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't think we need to throw out hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to make that happen. You mentioned that we had a contract, or that you have in writing the $50,000 grant. Do we have that?
So this is all a moving target. That is an issue. Rusty has been working on this for about 7 or 8 days. Norfolk has said we don't want it, and because of his AAU appointment as the vice chairman, this is why we have this opportunity. That's it. That's the reason we have this opportunity. So maybe Rusty can address the Chicago.
Commissioner, honestly, you're.
I mean, I appreciate it. I don't have the votes up here. I'm not going to go over. I just don't want you to think I don't want these folks here. I know that's what you're trying to say here, but there's no alternative. And the fact that we're giving money when no alternative, Greensboro or Chicago, time is running out.
Well,
the fact that the vice president of the AAU lives in Cocoa Beach is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And I want them to run their sports here. I wish them absolutely well. But if they have no other opportunities, if no one's come forward and said, hey, listen, we'll offer you $500,000, then why should we offer them anything if they make money off, I imagine they make money off participants. The participants are here, not, I don't know this arena. Rusty does. Rusty said right off the bat, the largest pool of contestants are here already.
Well,
they're not going to travel. They're not going to travel to Chicago. No one's flying airlines. It's down. People are not traveling to the extent to which they are. You want to go where that's close, and it sounds like we have all of that located right here. I'm just trying to save $200,000 so we can put up billboards and advertise on Facebook and do all those wonderful things that, draw tourists here that wouldn't otherwise come here.
Well, real quick, Commissioner, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to be a good fiduciary of the taxpayers' dollars. I appreciate that. I had one shot at this when this came down. The ideal location, quite frankly, would be Orlando. They've got a track at Disney. They've got the convention center that we're already using for volleyball the week before. I had one chance to pitch somewhere. I don't want to go pitch it to the Orange County Board of County Commissioners or Osceola. I think it needs to be here. And if we can get it and it's not going to be the numbers, and if we pull in the partners we think we can, and thank you, Sheriff, for that commitment. I think it's a bargain basement deal on something that has the potential upside of being a great event. I appreciate what you're doing. I understand completely. I just think the upside is potentially there, and this is where I would like to see it here. And when it comes down to the opportunities, I think this is a good.
Commissioner Lober?
Yeah, to me, this is like someone offering me a Lexus LS for the price of a Toyota Avalon. I just, it's a very clear decision in my mind. Giles, let me ask you a question, and this is similar to what I asked Rusty a little bit ago. Serving on the TDC, obviously you don't work for Rusty. He doesn't work for you. Do you think, were we to pass this up, there is a substantial chance or a non-insignificant chance that there simply won't be the games at all? Because I think what it keeps coming back to with Commissioner Tabaya is this perception that Rusty has no alternative but us. My thought is, regardless of the other opportunities which may or may not materialize, it's quite possible, and based on the conversation that we had last week, which was far longer than we've spent or that we will spend in here discussing this, I don't think they're going to happen, period, if they don't happen here.
Well, there's that. like Rusty said, a lot of the athletes in the state of Florida would be very appreciative of having it here. But I think we've got a window of opportunity to pick up an event for Brevard that we can be extremely proud of, that we have the facilities for, we have the people here, and the labor in Orlando of 50, 60 employees to put this big event on. And it's a relatively small investment for a very large return on the investment. So from Bob Barger and Tom Hermanson, all our friends on the TDC who talked about this for about an hour today, it's a tremendous opportunity for a return on our investment at a time when we need something like this. The governor, I believe Governor DeSantis, lifted all restrictions on youth sports last week, provided they met the guidelines. So I think it's safe. And I think, from a tourism standpoint, it would be just a tremendous boon towards the end of the summer.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes.
It was louder.
Ladies first.
I was just going to say, I mean, other than the rushed nature of this because of the circumstances changing so quickly, this is pretty typical of tourism dollars because these are tourism tax collected this is a tourism tax and it needs to be reinvested in tourism. I mean, regardless of whether or not you like those funds going there, it's pretty typical of the tourism dollars to go to sponsor events, correct?
It is, and, doing the arithmetic on this equation with the number of visitors we expect, the number of significant others, the family members, we conservatively think this will generate as much money in tourist bed tax to pay for this $50,000 for the track and the $50,000 after the grant from the Florida Sports Foundation.
And I feel more comfortable with this type of investment based on if the event comes here, making that investment, and you can actually see it physically, you can see it with the monies that are collected in, rather than the speculation on money on billboard, on advertisement, on things that are polls, to where that's also a lot of subjectivity. You can actually see it, feel it, and collect it. So I'm comfortable with it. I mean, I heard enough about it today for a good long amount of time during the TDC meeting.
Commissioner Smith?
So let me get this straight. We're looking at roughly $150,000 that we're not committed to until we get contracts, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it's not like we're throwing out $150,000 hoping that we're going to get $6-8 million. We're pretty confident that we make this happen. The kids are going to come, the families are going to come. From my perspective, it's a tremendous shot in the arm for our business community, for our sports, our TDC. These people are going to be spending money, so we're going to recoup this money and then some. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity if we can pull it off, if you guys can pull it off. And if you can pull it off, I think it's a win-win.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to have Commissioner Lober restate that motion, but I just want to reiterate that $50,000, another match from the state, Sheriff's thrown in 30 of that, and the other 50 we're doing actually is the capital improvement to our community of building a track. Otherwise, this isn't even a communication topic for tonight. So I think I'm pretty cool with it too. Commissioner Lober, you throw that in with the little
Sure.
few stipulations we had there.
Sure. So essentially, the motion would be to direct staff to work together a contract or contracts as necessary in order to facilitate the 2020 Junior Olympic Games with the AAU and any other parties necessary, to authorize the chair to sign that, with it being contemplated that there will be contingencies such that the AAU will have to be committed to actually coming here and hosting the games before they receive the money. There was another item you mentioned as well. I'm trying to recall what it was. I apologize.
The school board would agree to picking up that other amount if they didn't get it in a fundraiser.
Yes.
So
Yes. So that would be
track is
contemplated by the
completed.
motion as well.
Okay, I have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the board wish to include the legislative findings regarding tourism and publicly owned facilities in the last paragraph of the agenda report?
That
I'd love
sounds
to.
really good. Okay. Does the second hold? Oh, what, no one's, who's winning the second? Okay, Commissioner Smith, the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, passes 4-1. Thank you, sir, and I hope
Well
we have a
done.
great
Thank you all for
season.
coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to give the gavel
Thank you,
back
sir.
to Commissioner Lober. Here you go.
Thank you. All right, I've got the figurative gavel back. How do y'all want to do the rest of this? Because I know the sheriff's been here for some time, but we have a few other items. J3, I know we have at least 2 folks that are waiting for public comment. How do y'all want to handle it? What's your preference?
The sheriff is kind of under my board report, so.
Okay, are you in a rush, Sheriff, or Chief Deputy Waller?
No, sir, Junie's napping, so we're fine.
Right, I appreciate your patience, sir. All right, we'll just continue to go through it. I think these next couple items may be a little quicker. We'll go in order here. Jays and Juliet 1, which is a D4 item. I don't know how much intro you'd like, Commissioner Smith, but if someone wants to make a motion, I'm happy to second it. I've already been briefed by staff on this one.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion from Commissioner Smith, a second from Commissioner Isnardi. Any discussion on the motion to approve or the second? All in favor of approving item J as in Juliet 1, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, J1 passed unanimously. J2, summer camp. Welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Good to see you.
Mary Ellen Donner, Parks and Recreation Director. So at the May 19th board meeting, staff was requested to take a look at options to offer summer camp this summer 2020. Before you, you have an agenda report that outlines 4 options. The first option would be offering camp in 2 community centers in each of the areas, north, central, and south. The second option would be if AUE, our county's temporary staffing agency, can provide the necessary staff for the camps as presented in option 1, and there's 100% enrollment of those 6 facilities, another camp in an area would be opened if available. Option 3 is to open all of the 14 locations, excluding Max K. Rhodes Community Center, and Max K. Rhodes could be considered if an agenda further on in the agenda is approved. And then the 4th option is offering no summer camps. I have available to answer questions. There was an attachment or 2 based on the Commission's request to have some comparatives as well as potential financial comparisons if we were to perhaps go with option 1 or option 3.
Mary Ellen, with respect to the item that we spoke about earlier in the week, with it having to get an employer's letter is one of the options here. Help me out, because I apologize. I'm just trying to see what that would apply to in terms of the options or how that's designed to fit in.
So that recommendation would be in either of the options 1, 2, or 3. We listened and heard that the overriding concern was to be able to have working parents find locations where they could go to summer camp. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to fill the fewer slots with parents, children who have to go to work, because we think that perhaps if for the last few months children have been at home with parents and they might just want to take a break and send them off to summer camp. So we want to make sure that these spots truly are for parents who need that child in summer camp.
What would y'all like to do?
I have a couple questions.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I'm sorry, I did not get back to you earlier. I've been throwing some questions out to you last hour or so. But I looked at the Appendix A that you gave us with revenues and expenses. How does this typically line up to summer camps as far as revenues and expenses? Because I'm trying to figure out numbers here. Expenses look very high compared to children. I know Marcia asked you earlier, and you said it's a little bit to do with staffing. But do we typically go in the hole like this on summer camps?
We do not. We typically break even or better.
Okay, is the amount that you think we're going in the hole mostly is because of staffing?
Correct.
Let me throw out a recommendation. We have a ratio here that you're doing two staff members for 8 children.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we're doing like the gymnasium separation. It might be, I'm sorry, but you can do like 1 for 9 kids and have a floater go around for the bathroom situations or those types of things. Just my opinion, I think you're doing a little bit of overkill on that. Might be a way to cut back expenses a little bit. And I'm sorry I did not do this with you offline, but I think there might be a way to get some of these costs down, because when I looked at the cost, I kind of gasped. So maybe there's a way that we can work this out a little bit, because there is a way to stay within the CDC compliance and maybe not have so much expenses, be able to provide a safe atmosphere for the children. Just a thought.
Mary Ellen, hang on one sec. Mr. Abate has such a wonderful haircut. I'd like him to chime in on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. One thing I wanted to point out is the differential in those costs, I believe they are going to qualify as reimbursable under the CARES dollars and what the board has
Thank
already
you.
approved.
So
if we
that
want
is not gonna be in
do
the hole?
everything, right, those are going to be our expenses, but I think, it's something that the board could approve that we would submit as eligible as a cost of the coronavirus, because that's why we're doing this, to bring it to the, that level and follow the CDC guidelines. So I'm rather confident. I can't say with 100%, but I am, like we were talking about, at least 90 to 95% confident that we would be able to get that reimbursed out of the funding that the board's already approved.
Okay, you just solved a lot of my problem. Thank you.
And so what Mr. Abate is specifically referring to is one of those two counselors would hopefully be CARES Act funds reimbursable.
Commissioner Tobias.
Okay. So I want to go there because I think Mr. Abate might have muddied the water here a little bit based on the Appendix A. So I'm looking for some clarity here. First of all, and thank you for working with my office on this. You were very helpful. I think your numbers are a little rosy, and your assumption, whenever looking at projections, you asked about assumptions, and you helped clarify that. The assumption was that all of the participants in any of these paid full freight.
That is correct.
And we discussed this, but it wasn't reflected in here. That is, in fact, not the case. In fact, you found out that slightly more than a third of the participants get a discounted rate, some of as much as 75, but it sounds like the bulk of 50%. Is that correct?
Yes, there are 6 camps that are in neighborhood strategy areas that if we had the same number of participants this year as last year, the difference in the full pay of $90 as opposed to the $45, there would be an additional $33,000 deficit, because that would be revenue we would not collect. But I did want to point out that that we did not want to stack discounts. So the only discount that would be available would be if you are in a neighborhood strategy area, and that discount would be only 50%, so $45.
So to be clear, and thank you for pointing that out, to be clear, on option number 1, if we were to go that way, assuming, let's assume full freight right off the bat, everyone paid 100%, which we know is not going to be true, you would have expense of $518,000 and change. That's fair to say?
Yes.
We'd have revenue, again, of $190,000 and change, that being, assuming everyone paid 100%.
Correct.
CARES money comes in and doesn't solve the day, because there's still $195,000 of CARES money. So in other words, there is still a loss of somewhere between $133,000, that's if everyone pays 100%, and what's more likely to be $166,000, that with the similar projection of the amount of people that get a discounted rate. Not a double discount, but a single discount, so it somewhere gets us around a loss of $133,000 to $160,000.
Correct.
Assuming what you told me was about correct, and I know you're working, you did excellent work. You did even better work for a Canadian.
Is that a backhanded compliment?
Dual citizen.
We have a lot of Canadians.
Mary Ellen, you don't
here.
have to tolerate that.
Dual citizen.
Every
Alex
Canadian.
Trebek, Michael J. Fox, the founder of the Wonder Bra, all Canadians. You normally make roughly $100,000. Well, you told me somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 off of this. So we are having a shift of, in option A, about $250,000, going from positive 100 somewhere in the neighborhood to negative 150. That's a delta of $250,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I asked you previously, do you have $50,000 in the budget? And you said, no, there's going to have to be cuts. Well, guess what? You lost that $50,000.
Yes,
So this is option A. I'm sorry, option 1. You know, option 3 is, you know, gets up to a net loss of 350. 350 plus the 100 is 450. So we're closer to $500,000. But let's just go with the $250,000. What do you have up your sleeve to come up with that $250,000? I'll get to the quality of the camps in a minute, and I'm not going to say how you run the camps any better, because I have trouble with one child. I have no idea how you handle bunches. I trust that you know what the heck you're doing, but I'm more concerned with the financial aspect of things. Where's that 250 coming from?
So obviously, we have capital projects, capital money that we have yet expended. That would carry us through the end of this fiscal year. And we have them on a priority basis. So depending what option the Board of County Commissioners chooses, those projects would be postponed and maybe into future years.
And what? So there would be some tangible cost to
Yes,
doing
sir.
this. And you came up with these numbers, and I greatly appreciate that. How many distinct children are we talking about would participate in this? This is, over 8 weeks with a total of about, 206, I'm doing the math. About
264.
264.
Yes, sir.
You ran the numbers for me, and I greatly appreciate it. It's more than 264, but it's not 264 times 8, because many students or many participants go for multiple. So how many distinct, assuming option 1, how many, what's your best guess?
So we looked at the various numbers and in all of the areas, and we ended up with last year we had, I don't have a total, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, let's see, I'm sorry, quick math, never my forte. That's 100, 200, 300.
Do we have an engineer in the room?
400, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, yeah, about 1,500 unique registrants, so unique children, but
But that was when we had more camps
Correct.
than just.
that was
than-
all 15 camps.
And this is 6, so it's a third of that. So, if those numbers hold, we're looking at
Yes.
4 or 500 unique students, unique participants.
Participants, yes,
Okay.
who typically would come week after week.
Okay, now more onto the subjective question. Are these camps going to be fun?
For who? For the parents?
No, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Looking to sign up.
No, help me, I'm looking to run away. Help me, you went through some of the CDC guidelines, and thank you for, again, this just shows you did not make this decision lightly, and I greatly appreciate all the time and effort you went through to make this decision. You talked about, what I'm fearful of is that parents sign up for this expecting the wonderful services that Parks and Rec has provided in the past, and that won't come to fruition, not because of a lack of desire, just because of CDC guidelines. So can you help me, and you put it in here, so I know you've already done it, can you tell me just how fun these camps will actually be?
This would definitely be a different experience from any summer camp years past.
How many field trips are we going on?
We will be going, anticipated at this point, none. No field trips. Also, we have decreased the age. There are no specialty camps, no disability camps, and no teen camps, because we are looking specifically at what the board directed as far as providing camp for parents who have to go back to work. Will it be fun? We will try and make it fun. We will make it as fun as we possibly can with solitary activities.
Commissioner Britton?
Yeah, Ms. Donor, I just did some math real quick. I took the revenue and I divided it by the $90. I got 72 kids. I'm just working on one end of the north end. So I took 70 kids, I divided it by 4, and I got 18 staff members. And then I did the expenses. So the expenses for, I'm guessing staff, I'm sure we're not paying them each $1,000 a week to do this, right?
No.
So there's other expenses mixed in. So, but I did do the math on the expenses per kid, and it's $257 per kid to do the camp. I still think that's really high. So I'm sorry, I should have asked you for a breakdown with this. I really think there might be a way to kind of cut those costs a little bit, and I don't want to do this to you right here, but I mean, if it was close, but it seems like a really high number right now to me. So
we did break it down, and we did it by staff. We also took the hourly rate, so we actually took actuals of what we think for the various levels of staff would be. We looked at $25 per child per week as what we would be providing for, because we can't share toys and we can't share crayons. So $25 per child.
For stuff.
For stuff.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And really, it was the staffing and the supplies was.
So staffing's going to be like $225 per kid a week to have 2 staff members watch them?
And the difference is because we're on an 8-to-2 ratio.
Yeah.
Because typically, a summer camp for younger children is a 1-to-15 ratio.
Right.
And for older children, it's a 1-to-20 ratio.
Right. And maybe,
So
is there a way
2 to 8
to,
is
is there a way to
very
maybe do
different.
something different with that ratio then? I think you would save a lot of the cost, and you might be able to end up not being in the hole.
So if I were to reduce the ratio, I would lose the CARES Act money because we would typically be paying for a counselor per group. So the second counselor.
But it wouldn't pay for the first counselor, and you'd save some funds. I just did it on this, and I don't know.
We would have to still, we would not be able to charge the first counselor to CARES money because in a typical summer camp situation, we have to pay for the first counselor.
Right, but if I took the revenue of $51,000 and I cut the expenses in half because it's mostly staff, it's $74,000, and then we're only losing $24,000 of the net instead of $96,000, and it's still higher than the CARES.
Yes, but you would lose the CARES money
Yeah,
of $195,000.
But you wouldn't go in the whole $20,000 as much. So I know I'm putting you on the spot. I am so sorry to do this with you.
That's okay, that's okay. Just a quick blush at it, it would probably look the same way, but the numbers would be decreased because you would decrease the expenses by 1 counselor per group, but you would lose all of the CARES money.
So the expenses on North area would drop to $74,021. So you take that amount, take it from the revenue, and if you ran that across, we're instead of going the net of 43,000, say it was the CARES, we're only going to be in the first column a net of 20,000 instead of 43,000 after the CARES. I really should have done this with you earlier,
That's
but we're
okay.
about to vote this, and I think we need to vote it with, go back to the drawing board with a little bit of tighter numbers and take a look at maybe expenses.
My numbers gentleman who saves me is with me. This is Larry Wojciechowski. That doesn't roll off my tongue easily.
Hi, Mr. Wojciechowski.
That's why you said numbers, gentlemen.
Yes.
I'm looking over at the clerk's side to see what they're going to do as far as minutes. I think they're going to give it a best stab if we don't want to spell that out.
So that's.
Yeah. Okay. When we came up with the numbers for every site that we did a calculation for, the biggest drive, of course, was the staffing, as you pointed out, going with a ratio of 2 counselors for 8 children. Again, that fits the guidelines that we've been instructed to go with.
Is that CDC, though? You have to do it? Or if we did 8-to-1, would you still get CARES reimbursement?
No.
No. You wouldn't get that because that counselor would be there anyway. So we would have to pay for the first counselor
it's the second counselor that cares.
Okay,
would be willing to
question,
pay
what if you
for.
did 1 to 15 and then brought in 2 with the second counselor being that, because that still fits in with the guidelines for,
Are we still going to fit the CDC guidelines by doing that?
Currently, the guidelines from CDC is groups less than 10.
okay, well, we're still going in the hole more using the CARES money than if we just did it.
Yes.
Yeah, so it would be better just to do the 1 to 9 ratio, cut the staffing in half, then we don't go in the hole as much. I think we need to look at those numbers.
Okay?
So,
Okay.
All right, any further questions for Mary Ellen?
Just a quick one.
Please.
Does some of this have to do with the fact that, you know, the county decided to cancel summer camp, and now we're trying to hurry up and do it? I mean, as far as rehiring and that sort of thing, is there an expense with that as well?
No.
Because I know we shifted staff to other departments and that sort of thing that would have normally handled the summer camp.
The summer camp counselors are temporary staffing, which would be paid through AUE. So AUE dollars are AUE dollars, which are in our operating budgets. Our full-time staff oversee the camp, but are not the camp counselors. So the AUE dollars are completely separate.
Okay, and my next question for Frank, as far as COVID dollars, if you're talking specifically about reimbursement for an employee based on COVID reimbursement or using it for that, is there any other dynamic of that program, the camp, money lost, or otherwise where that COVID funding could pick up some of those costs?
good question.
I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? I mean,
Yes.
considering that COVID is how it affects our government and how it affects our population, and it can be used for any COVID-related expense, I can't see why we wouldn't be able to use it for something else within that budget or within that loss.
Commissioner, I see Jill Hayes in the back. Maybe she would be the best to address this one, if you don't mind.
While we're doing that, I just
was gonna
took
say,
the
I think Frank was
element.
gonna answer it, but
I just
okay.
took the CARES out of it and did that element at 70,000 in the hole if we just forget about that funding and do a 1 to
Well, I mean,
10
even
ratio,
aside
just
from
so
all-
you know. But
even
then still have
aside-
CARES money. I agree.
Right, and aside from all this, whether we're in the hole or we're not, I mean, the bottom line is a lot of people use these camps because these parents are working. So,
Sure.
yeah, it costs some money. Yeah, there's that expense, but I mean, that's what that funding was for.
Yeah.
And because we take a loss this year, doesn't mean we're going to take that loss next year.
Right, but a 1 to 10, it's totally appropriate in those classrooms. I think we might have, I'm just sorry I didn't do this
I
earlier
think we
for
jumped the
y'all,
gun
so-
shutting down the camps to begin
I do-
with.
I do
because-
too.
Because this board should never have found out after the fact. We should never have gotten a press release via social media to find out we weren't having camps.
We have
Because my
communication
phone was
problems.
blowing up. Not sure about you guys, but, I mean, it was kind of a cluster from the beginning, to put it mildly, and I don't ever want to see that happen again. But go ahead, Jill.
Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, the CARES dollars can be spent to cover expenses, but those expenses have to be directly related to COVID-19. So as Frank indicated earlier, it's those additional costs, whether it's retrofitting the parks, it's hiring the additional staff. Now, in terms of the lost revenue, because you're going to have potentially less participants depending on the options and depending on, based on the CDC guidelines, the CARES dollars cannot be used for revenue replacement.
Okay,
So-
I mean, that's obvious, but I'm saying as far as the extra staff goes, the extra staff is needed because the numbers are down.
Right, so yes, the CARES Act would be available to fund the additional staffing,
Right.
yes.
And we could probably use it for some of the stuff that's maybe used for, the sanitizing the
Correct.
stuff and doing all that stuff.
If there were additional-
Because what I don't understand is all these other municipalities and these churches and these schools, everybody's running summer camp at full steam. I mean, I called the Palm Bay Parks and Rec director only because I know him, and I asked his thoughts on this. And first off, he can't understand why in South County we would want to open Vieira and Micco. Because, I mean, are you telling me that Micco's going to have more kids than, say, John Rhodes? Or, I mean, why were those chosen over the others? So, I mean, I'm just trying to be respectful here. I don't understand what we're doing. I don't understand why we're arguing these dollars when we could get reimbursement for some of them, and we have to be understanding.
So Rhodes Park, to specifically answer that question, it's currently being utilized for another purpose. And there is an agenda item coming up that if that agenda item is approved, Rhodes Park, the current tenant that's in there now, will be vacating, and Rhodes Park would be
Because
a
our community
summer-
centers are open, correct?
Yes, other than Rhodes Park Community Center.
I mean, our community centers in the county are open right now.
Yes, ma'am.
So our community centers, who I think CDC and otherwise have talked about spreading of COVID and everything else in small quarters, are open, but we're concerned about having how many staff members per child? I'm just wondering why we're adhering so strongly and strictly to CDC guidelines of 10 or less, but we're not in other ways.
We are adhering to the 10 or less guidelines in the community centers currently.
But maybe we could save some revenue there by, maybe shifting some of those expenses that were maybe with staff or expenses, that way of what we're keeping open at the community center versus summer camp for kids that, for parents that have to work.
Well, and one of the points that we mentioned in the agenda item was that if the community centers were to be used for summer camp, there virtually would be nothing else in that community center other than summer camp.
Right.
So I think at this point, we really need to do it a little bit in terms of giving direction to staff on what we want. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah.
I
think we should open the camps. I think we
I
should
think
do
if
it a
we
1
send
to
it
10
back-
ratio. And I think they need to come back, but I think we need to do it. But I think if we do the 1 to 10 ratio, we're not going to be in the hole as much as this final number, even getting reimbursement. I think the 1 to 10 is adequate, and I think we just need to sharpen the pencil there. And as far as going in a little bit, it's last minute, it's going to happen, but it's not as bad as what the bleed was going to be if we just don't worry about the reimbursements, other than we could use it for the PP and all those other things like you just recommended.
Right.
So I think there's a way to really cut this budget
The
down
only
and
thing
still
that
do
makes
it.
me nervous about sending it back is that now we're waiting again. We're
Well, let's
sending it
just say
back.
we're going to do it and
Right.
direct them to come back with sharper numbers, but we'll do it. I'm good with that.
So
Right.
the motion, as I understand it, I'm going to take it as such, is to direct county staff to make this available with a ratio of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
And then, Mary Ellen, what do you have?
So I actually just sent Larry back to see if he could recalculate some numbers. So if I may indulge the board, he should be back. Perhaps you could
Do you want me to revisit this?
revisit this a little later in the evening so he can get you those sharper numbers. If
All right,
that,
we'll recall this agenda item at the end. If that's all right, we'll try to give you as long as we can.
and was there public comment that perhaps?
On this item, I don't
No?
believe so.
No,
Jim,
okay.
0? I see 0, okay.
Okay.
So we'll just recall this item at the end.
We'll go run some more numbers and we'll come back to you.
Perfect, I appreciate it. All right, so we're going to move on to J3. I do know we have public comment on J3. I apologize to those folks who've been waiting as long as they have. Just because they have been waiting, I'd like to start out with them. We have Ken O'Neill from Melbourne first, and then RJ, looks like DeLown from Palm Bay. So let's hear from Mr. O'Neill from Melbourne. And I appreciate your patience, sir. I apologize for the wait.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is R.J. DeLon. Mr. O'Neill has given his time to me for a moment.
Could you get a little closer to the mic or speak
Sure.
up some? I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect, thank you.
All right. So I am coming on behalf of Little League Baseball and Softball for the county. And I am representing a specific population within our Little League program. Our volunteer umpires work tirelessly and do it for the price of a hot dog if we're real good. Otherwise, we give our time and we do it because of the love of the game. And it is vitally important countywide that we get back on the field, not just for the kids and the parents, but for us also as volunteer umpires. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate your patience again. I apologize for how long it's taken us to get to you, sir. All right, and we have R.J. DeLown from Palm Bay, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your last name in any way.
Did we outlast?
Do we have R.J.?
That
We're
was
done.
RJ.
Was that R.J.? No, we had We had Ken O'Neill and then RJ. Was that RJ?
That was RJ.
Okay, so I suppose we have Mr. O'Neill then,
Or maybe not.
from Melbourne. Maybe?
They're only here for questions.
Oh, your questions only? Okay, perfect. All right. Again? Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a 10-minute bathroom break at the request of one of the commissioners who shall remain nameless, and we'll reconvene at 6:40 on the dot. Thank you all.